We're going to call to order the Kentucky Community and Technical College System Board of Regents Audit Committee. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chelsea, and let's call a roll.
Okay. Chair Cox.
Here.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Here.
Regent Girdler. Regent Heerdink. Regent Hodges. Regent Jackson has rolled off the board. Regent McGraw.
Here.
Regent Stevens.
Here.
And Regent Martin. Okay, we have 4, so we do not have a quorum yet, which means we cannot take action on the minutes at this time.
Okay. We just, Chelsea, if you would be the keeper of a very ADD sort of chair of the audit committee and make sure that we come back to it.
I will.
If you would be so kind as to do that. I think we're okay if we go ahead with the rest of our agenda as long as we don't have to approve anything at this point. And I'm hopeful that some other folks will join. As I always like to say before we get started here, in many ways, I think that this committee is the most important of our Board of Regents because we do have so much of the organization's credibility in this committee. I'm very much a proponent of participation. I believe it's important that if you have a question that it gets asked. I believe that if you have a comment, we desperately need it. The way we get better, the way we get stronger is to really have a good, strong audit committee that is active and performs. So just be aware that at any given time, I could easily call on you. And at the end of it, I have a rule that everybody has to make a comment before we leave. I think audit committees are best when they're very active. So with that, let's get started. And I'm going to ask Buddy, the Interim Vice President of Administrative Services, to provide us with an update on the internal audit for FY 23-24.
All right. So with the internal audit, I'm going to turn this over to Jody Wren to provide the Dean Dorton internal audit update for this quarter.
Wonderful. Very good to be with you all this morning and happy to bring to you our report for the last quarter. Overall, the results of our project have been very positive, and we have had a great working relationship with everybody, and they've been able to provide us information in a timely manner, and we appreciate that. We have performed work at a high level. I'll share with you. We did some work on the disaster response and security audit. We looked at 3 schools with our typical business audit standards, which are Somerset, South Central, and Ashland. We also performed a whistleblower kind of community audit of the whole system, looked at month-end reconciliation. Sorry, I'm having a little problem with my computer. And our traditional IT testing controls. When we look at each area, we come up with observations and we look at, and we, I guess, classify them as either high risk, meaning it has a serious internal control or risk management issue that management needs to be aware of and work on immediately. Moderate risk, which is a management issue that could lead to potential loss of controls, loss of higher level of risk, and then lower risk, which are issues that management should look into, but do not or not raising to the highest level. And if you looked at our summary on page 3, it shows that for this quarter, this third quarter, we had no high risk issues, which is a good thing. 3 in the moderate area, and the remaining risks were in the lower risk area. And I'll be walking you through those, but just wanted to give that high level review. In the disaster response and active shooter audit, we spent time surveying all of the colleges, performing some interviews, and reviewing the policies and procedures. And we'd like to also identify strengths as we're going through our reviews. And we identified that the good news is all of the colleges have policies and procedures in place in case of a disaster or active shooter. And all of the colleges have a form of security lockdown in their buildings, which is really good. We did identify some moderate risk observations, which include that some schools, which we've listed in the findings, have had trouble with securing doors and controlling access via mechanical keys. And we just encourage maybe the system to look at maybe implementing electronic, RFID fobs or cards that may be able to assist in this area. And when we spoke with the Director of Safety and Emergency Services, I believe he is, creating a plan to address this risk. Secondly, we identified that security cameras at a few of the schools have limitations in their effectiveness, and we encourage the system to consider, providing resources to assist the college in advancing that security equipment. And again, the Director of Safety has looked into this and is working on a plan to address that. And then finally, in this area, we identified during our on-site visits that I guess the way in which the system has to request projects to be completed through the Department of Engineering and Contract Administration sometimes results in certain projects not being prioritized, which creates a barrier in moving forward with some projects. So I know in talking with the Assistant Vice President for Facility Support Services that safety staff is looking at that and maybe looking at other options that could assist them. But we received that feedback through several of our interviews. Lower risk observations in here are also included in this report. And we met with, system leadership to discuss these items as well. And I will walk you through these. These include some areas related to having enough adequate resources to do their work. And I think it's in the way that funds are prioritized, and maybe certain schools don't have the funds. So we are encouraging the system to look at maybe how they're allotting funds. Again, some schools expressed concern in how the financial constraints really impact them in hiring extra security staff when necessary. Again, I think that's just an overarching barrier that some of the schools felt and maybe need some assistance in how to navigate that and use their funds more appropriately. The third low risk finding we observed is related to the tracking of CPE credits. And there is one system that has been created to track all of that, but from our interviews, we learned that many schools are not necessarily using that system, which I think could make make it difficult for the system to look at all of the colleges across the board. So I think there needs to be maybe some increased training and awareness and the benefit of using the tool that's made available and determining what barriers are there that are keeping some of the schools from not documenting their CPE in that system. So the good news with that is the tool exists. It's just maybe not being used, not implemented with fidelity across all of the colleges. The fourth low risk item relates to that Madisonville has implemented an innovative solution called Campus Card. And again, it's a technology that enables readiness and precise real time. And there may be a way to leverage that campus guard across other systems and reduce response times and improving effectiveness. So that's just something we wanted to make you aware. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it may be another tool in the toolkit for all the colleges to benefit from what Madisonville has done. And the final low risk item in this area is with regards to utilization of the Centurion third-party security assessment company. Again, it appears that not all of the colleges are leveraging that and using it to its fullest, which may not be sufficient enough to address all of the diverse and complex security needs. And that can be a challenge, especially when you're trying to implement something, in all of the different locations. But again, the Director of Safety and Emergency Preparedness shared with us that it is something that they're looking into to figure out how to do that better. So are there any questions on the work that we did in this area before I move on?
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing these items to light, and a reminder to our regents that we have decided to pull out of DECA. And so that's going to be a transition that we make for cost savings, but it gives us a little bit more control over the priority of projects going through the system. So just want to make sure everyone's aware of that decision.
Yeah, I don't have
ahead.
a comment about the audit findings. I'm just an offer of support. This is an area that my folks, I think, do really well. So if Ryan, you want to have an offline conversation about sort of security access, training, etc., my team would be happy to talk with folks in your office about it.
Would welcome it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Regent McGodd. That's wonderful. And a couple of thoughts that I have. This has become so much of everyone's every day now. It's on my worry list on a regular basis, and I know it is for everyone's, and we're no different here. I guess a couple of things that jump out at me on this is anytime you have this sort of circumstance, this sort of documentation on an audit, you're also putting out there that you know of certain things and that you're aware of certain things. So this to me becomes one of those where we need probably a regular report to be able to get updated on where we're going and how we're doing it. That would be the first thing. The second thing, in a more micro sort of perspective, and I don't want to get us off in a rabbit hole here, but are there considerations for how we use metal detectors in the future for the academic educational buildings and others that are on campuses? I know I'm in the hospital world, and I never thought I'd see a day when we're looking at collapsing the number of ways you can get into a facility so that we can funnel you through. And there's all kinds of ways you can do this. There's some that are very obvious. There's some that are not. I'll tell you, as we've piloted it in the more casual, it's not had as much impact. In the more intentional, where people see it, what we've seen on a lot of film is people approach a metal detector and see that we have it and turn around and leave. Way too much information, but do you think that somewhere in the future that we're going to be looking at that sort of level of security? And I guess that's for you, Dr. Quarles. I mean, again, I don't want to rabbit hole. I'm just thinking that we're all in this together. So,
again, I'm not aware of that, but we can talk with our members of PLT at our next monthly meeting. Unless Chris or Buddy, if there's something that conversations that occurred before I started, I'm not aware of any active conversations on this.
This is Buddy, and there's been a few conversations around this opportunity. And as always, finances come into play.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, our overall goal is, the safety of our students and our faculty and staff. I mean, that is the top priority for our facilities management and the whole team here at KCTCS. So we're dedicated to working on these opportunities moving forward. And part of there is a little bit of training that we have to continue with our colleges in regards to how everybody is handling their safety and security locally.
Great. Thank you. We can proceed.
Looks like we had a hand raised, maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I think that once we hear we've got security video problems, we've got door problems, we're going to have to do something. I mean, you know, basically, I've been at both ends. Is schools don't like to be told what to do, or we don't have the money. Well, safety is got to be our number one priority. So those items, we just can't put that on the back burner. We've got to, in my opinion, we've got to be very aggressive in doing those type of things. So I would hope that the team at the systems office is, you know, I know money's always tight and there's always excuses, but there's no excuse for, all we need is a tragedy happen, that something happens and we were aware of it and we didn't do anything about it. So we've got to take the bull by the horn and take care of that. Thank you.
Point well taken. Thank you.
Well said, James Lee. Awareness is ownership.
Yep. It is. So the next three reviews that I'm going to go over are business office reviews, and we apply very consistent procedures to all of the colleges, and we rotate them throughout the year. So we looked at 3 in this last quarter, and we, you know, performed interviews with the business office staff. We reviewed the segregations over cash procedures, asset tag procedures, and purchasing. And then we also reviewed their monthly reporting, budgets, journal entries, etc. At Somerset, we noted that they had a very strong set of a very strong and mature internal control environment, and looked to follow very closely the systems procedures. So that was really good. Their Pro Card activity selections were really in great shape, were well documented and supported in the PeopleSoft, and the business office internal control procedures were operating, you know, with an acceptable level with no findings. We just found one low risk observation to share with you with regards to I-9s. We noted, and some of it you can call a little bit ticky-tacky, but it does go with the, you know, new kind of compliance rules. Years weren't necessarily always consistently documented with the 4 numbers, the 20, etc. And then a couple where the start date wasn't noted. These are low risk, but important that, you know, the procedures around the I-9s and the monitoring of those tighten up a little bit. So the next school was the South Central Kentucky Community School. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Okay. Again, performing this, you know, similar type procedures. And we also noted a very mature internal control environment for the school. Pro Card selections were well documented and supported, and the internal control procedures were operating at acceptable level with no findings. We did find one low level risk to share with regards to assets weren't necessarily being properly documented upon disposal as required. So we worked with the school to kind of talk about that. The final school we looked at was Ashland Community Technical College. Again, same procedures that we implemented and had the same kind of observations with regards to a mature internal control environment. The Pro Card activity selections were well documented and supported, and the internal controls were operating at an acceptable level with no findings. We did have one low-level finding with regards to, and this was, we talked a lot with Buddy on this just to try to get our head around it. So we had an instance where the purchaser so what was it? The purchaser is a different person, and the reviewer was also one. Like there was an item in there that the reviewer also purchased. So I think they purchased it on behalf of that person. So we need to be sure when we're looking at segregation of duties that there's no conflict of interest in the review of the transaction. So we just happened to, stumble upon that during our review, and we talked through it, and I think everybody understood how it kind of slipped through the process, and that they'll be working on that going forward.
So just a clarification on that one has been resolved. We actually had a P2P live Teams meeting with Ashland and brought this to their attention, and we've made a solution on how they can proceed with this in the future. Basically, the Pro Card owner was both the approver of all 3 levels of the approval stages. So we have worked with Ashland and corrected that moving forward.
Okay, the next audit we're going to talk about is the whistleblower audit. And we, performed interviews, we reviewed documentation, and then we obtained a current listing of employees and sent out surveys to 5 employees from each college and business unit, a questionnaire to gather their understanding of the whistleblower policies. And the good news is that there are policies in place and a whistleblower solution. When we get into our low risk observations, we discovered a big gap in employee awareness. And this is not unusual, unfortunately, in organizations, but sometimes there's a lot of emphasis spent in the front end of implementing a hotline and those kind of procedures. But then over time, with turnover, it's not necessarily as widely communicated. So we did identify about 50% of the staff and faculty weren't aware of the existence of the ethics hotline. And and with that, just comes, if they do become aware, what does somebody need to do? There are policies and procedures that the employees can look to, but sometimes having more readily access, things for the employees to use kind of help if it's necessary. I mean, you always hope it's not necessary. The hotline is used, but it's, just if you have 50% of the people not even being aware of it, it could create some issues. So I think we had 3 recommendations for this. So it's really just kind of one observation, but to incorporate an annual ethics hotline training for all faculty and staff to ensure they know it, to develop a communication plan to keep that ongoing awareness out there through posters, places on the website, etc. And then to incorporate the ethics program into the onboarding process to ensure, again, awareness. Because like I said, sometimes when we're implementing, we do a great job of communicating, but ongoing, it sometimes can kind of wane and interest kind of moves away from it because you think, oh, we've implemented and now we're done. And it's something that needs to be constantly reminded. Any questions on that?
I do have a quick question. If someone makes a complaint, where does it go? Who answers the ethics hotline?
I believe it goes to the general counsel. And then they decide where it needs to, depending on what the issue is.
Mm-hmm. And I, so forgive my ignorance relative to with the board. Is that been communicated to the board if you receive like X number of, a certain ethics complaint was made, a certain whistleblower claim was made? Is that then would be, I assume, discussed in executive session at the board meeting, kind of procedurally?
Right, Chairman Cox and I were actually talking about this yesterday, weren't we? That right now we don't believe that you are receiving a report of the number and things. So we were going to talk to Pam about that.
Yeah, I think it's at least in my experience, and I see Chair Martin, you have joined, so you have probably more direct experience in this. In my experience, there have been isolated situations where we've heard specifics around it. But as far as a trended report on a quarterly or annual basis of what we're seeing and what it tells us, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I don't have a memory of it.
Well, and I'm not suggesting we even create that or see that. I'm just suggesting if there's an important issue that's raised, anything that's legitimate that has some substance to it, then we'd be made aware of it. Because I'm sure there's all sorts of odds and ends, in my own experience where, an employee feels aggrieved, but it's not an ethics issue. It's maybe more of a personnel matter or something.
Correct.
But for me, I think those are the issues that Dr. Quarles should assess whether or not it should come to the board, because we definitely do not want to get into the weeds with the various ethics issues. But I've not heard of any glaring ethics issues other than the ones that we've already addressed throughout the years.
Correct.
Thank you. I know Chelsea has her hand up.
I think I see Regent Hamilton as well. He might be ahead of me.
Oh, you can go ahead. I'll catch up when you get done.
Okay. Regent McGraw, to your point, if it is a complaint that we receive that does have the potential to lead to litigation against the organization, that would be something that would be included in the litigation report that you do review in closed session. But the ones we have seen, those are few and far between.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you.
The question I had was back to safety and security at each of the individual colleges. And I did hear us say certain colleges have certain items that other colleges may or may not have. So is that that budget comes out of the systems office so that each college has the exact same budget for safety and security related items? Or is it dependent specifically on that particular college and their ability to fund these individual? If you guys understand my question.
Yeah. Buddy.
Yes, sir. So currently that is the colleges. They budget their own system security at each local institution. Currently, there is no overall arching security opportunity that is budgeted out of the for sales office to each of the colleges. Those are done locally. The only one that is a contract for all colleges is let me get the name of it, Centura Solutions. That is a vendor that we contracted here at the system office. That is a system-wide contract that is charged to the colleges. The other two opportunities that were mentioned was the CPE and the campus guard. Those were done locally at each of the institutions on their own, using their own funding.
Okay, I just was concerned from the perspective of that if you have deemed safer colleges than other colleges, and then they happen to potentially be in challenged communities, then someone I would suspect would have to be able to say, hey, why is our college not as safe as X's college? So again, just a thought. But I know, clearly we've got to make sure we've got consistency across the system so that there is not an assumption of unfairness based on location.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that, Keith. And so again, I'll get with the presidents to talk about this. And then, of course, our upcoming budget will be proposed to you all at the next board meeting in June. And then Candace does let you know, our general counsel does on a regular basis give me updates on ethics complaints that come through the system. So I am being made aware of that. And we're happy to generate, perhaps if you all deem it necessary, a brief report. If you want to do it yearly or twice a year or quarterly, we're happy to do that as well if you want that.
I don't want to create work, and we absolutely trust you. I think, maybe to the audit committee a once a year, just FYI trended of what we saw and how we should view that from is there more education needed around this? Is there better definition needed around what the hotline's for? Are we just getting HR calls on here? Or, just so that we can be diligent as an audit committee to say, hey, we know it exists. We ask how it's used, and we use that to develop how we better educate our employees about this in the future.
Sounds great.
And if I can add, I also think that just adds some further credibility to the process so that people know all levels, or at least seeing that a report came in too, which is good.
Wouldn't that hit when we go into executive session with any potential litigation?
If it rises to the level of litigation, I mean.
That's what I was thinking, that the board should be made aware of it if it rises to that. Anything less than that, probably not.
Or just the category. Yeah. So the next results that I will share with you is from our month-end close and reconciliation review that we performed. Again, we interviewed staff, we reviewed and reviewed the documented policies and procedures, and then obtained support for all the steps in the process. And overall, we through our reviews, it showed that personnel are very aware of what their roles are, which is really good, and the application for the procedures and the samples were consistent and in accordance with the monthly procedures, and we had no issues in that area. So that is very well done. The final area is done by I think the best in the state's IT department. They work really well in identifying key controls and ensuring that those IT controls are operating as well as can be expected, and also meet, the various standards that are so important to ensuring proper IT controls. And through the review of those IT controls, our IT team found no issues that rise to a high, moderate, or low level. So I think that says a lot. And again, they, did this through interviewing, reviewing, verifying, and found that KCTCS uses the firewalls and email encryption to reduce the risk of sensitive data being accessed. They don't publish sensitive data on the websites or social media, which is good, and they have well-established policies and procedures. So that can be something everybody can be proud of. Any questions on? I kind of went through those. There weren't any issues, but didn't know if you had any questions on those last two.
No, extremely proud of that, but also a reality check that the most complete, safest is still vulnerable, and it's a constant struggle for leadership, I know. So keep our eyes on that as well.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up what Mr. Hamilton said is, I'd ask the IT people, when we're looking at cameras, and we're talking about, can we look at, or is there a possibility that we have cameras throughout our campuses that are paid for by the systems or through the system contracts or so everything is universal in that regard, in regard to safety and what we're going on? So I asked Chris about that.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I think the key word there is consistency. We do have some colleges who are farther advanced in that area than others, and some are doing a really good job in that area. But to answer your question, yes, that is something that would be possible. I think it would just be an effort on our part to make sure that we have consistency across all the colleges.
So the final area we look at is we will track and monitor the follow-up and the implementation of the recommendations and management's response to those recommendations. So right now, we identified 17 issues in total, and there have been 17 action plans prepared. 3 have already been completed and 14 are in process and are really just not due yet. So we will continue to monitor those. And then we've just provided you a listing of those in the back, and if anybody has any questions, but we definitely appreciate the opportunity to serve KCTCS in this important role. My background is I've been a chief audit executive at many different organizations, a lot in state government with Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, Kentucky Higher Education or Kentucky Housing Corporation, et cetera. And I'm really impressed at your all's decision to implement an internal control or internal audit system in your processes, because it's so important to try to get in front of things as best you can. And we are here to serve you all and to help you all identify and address any risks and to help you all achieve your objectives. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm pleased to be here.
Jody, thank you so much. We absolutely appreciate it. Any questions for Jody before we, and I'm going to give you a heads up, Chelsea, we're going to go back, and I don't know, you'll have to tell me, do we need to do a roll call again in order to establish the quorum, or can we just say we know there is a quorum and move to the vote?
I will add that Regent Martin has joined, so we do have a quorum, and we can go back to approve the February 16th, 2024 Audit Committee meeting minutes.
Great. So we need to approve those meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was February 16th. Any corrections to the meeting minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Do we need to vote individually on that, or can we move on?
We can do this by consensus if there are no objections.
Gotcha. Great. So Jody, thank you very much. That was I was really pleased to see the progress that's been made, and thanks to the Regents, the level of questioning is exactly the type of work that we need to be doing, and the best way that we can help the leadership team is to always be looking at this and participating the way we are there. So very good. Let's move ahead though. So I'd like to ask Buddy, Interim Vice President of Administrative Services, to provide us some information on the internal auditor contract.
So yeah, so currently we're on a 1-year basis on renewing the contract extension for our internal audit with Dean Dorton. And so I'm requesting that this body, the audit committee, make a recommendation to approve an extension to the internal audit contract for 1 more year from July 1 of 2024 through June 30th of 2025.
Any questions? Anything? Are the financial terms of that changing at all? Or are we just extending what is in place?
I'm sure there'll probably be in the contract, there is an escalator from year to year to usually a 3 to 5% increase. I do anticipate that there will be a slight increase in the contract, but we won't know that until this body and the board approves the ability to extend that contract later on.
Very good. Are there any other questions? Is there a motion to extend the internal auditor contract for 1 year?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Candace. Second?
Second.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, so Chelsea, we can conduct this vote by a show of hands.
Let's do this one by roll call.
Gotcha.
Okay. Chair Cox,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton,
Yes.
Regent McGraw,
Yes.
Regent Stevens,
Yes.
Regent Martin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, and thanks everyone. So let's move on to the state examination. Buddy, you're still up. If you would provide us an update on the state examination.
Yes. So as this body is aware, the board approved state examination by the Auditor of Public Accounts. that was conducted, and the results were received by KCTCS on December 7th of 2023. And on February 1st, 2024, KCTCS had replied back to the audit with their responses. As of this date, there were 5 findings and 2 observations. As of today, 4 of the findings have been resolved, and we're moving forward with those. And the 2 observations were also completed as well. The one finding, which is finding 1, which is the KCTCS system office unrestricted carry force balance, is not accurately or transparently reported to the board. This was the state examination. Their recommendation was to provide a forensic audit into this matter. That forensic audit is started and is expected to be completed by October 31st of 2024. Once that audit is completed, then we can make our final recommendation on this finding to the state examination, to the account auditor for public accounts to finalize it. The other findings, like say, there's a document in here that shows our responses, and all the other findings and the 2 observations have been completed, are currently in place. And some of these findings we've already reported to the board. There are several of them that we report to the board, and we've done that starting in December. We did that again in March, and we plan on providing you this information again at the June board meeting. So that's a continuation of these findings on and our responses moving forward. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Great. Any questions at this point? Very good. We'll keep moving forward then around the forensic audit. Chelsea, are you going to stand in for provide some results of that?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
So as Buddy mentioned, we have selected a forensic auditor. At the last audit committee meeting, we were still going through that RFP process. So KPMG was the firm that was selected. They began work on April 8th. So the tight turnaround, hasn't been a lot done yet. We're still in the very early stages, but they have established work streams around certain areas such as fiscal issues, HR issues, that kind of thing. And those work streams are going to be working in tandem. So it doesn't require one to be finished before the next starts. They kind of all work together. And the project management office is kind of facilitating that document collection that is ongoing. So staff is working very quickly to get them the information they need so that they can continue their analysis and provide project plans and reports moving forward.
Great. Any questions?
Just a comment. I'm excited about the progress that the forensic audit is making. It appears to be on time for that hopefully October completion date. But as we know, audits, we don't determine their timelines if they find something, but it appears to be going pretty smoothly. And so we hope to have those results back so that if we have to take any legislative action or other actions, we can get that prepared for January.
Great. Let's hope it moves quickly. That's always
Yes.
a better sign with an audit. So we're at the place now where, is there any new business that the committee would like to discuss or get on? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to ask President Quarles if anything that you would like to discuss before we go round robin on the regents and kind of give us what's going on in your world.
Yes, if you don't mind. Obviously, we had a full Board of Regents meeting yesterday. We are knee deep in Senate Joint Resolution 179 considerations. We'll go into that further at our board meeting next month in Bowling Green. Look forward to seeing you all there, and Phil Neal is excited to host us. Relevant information for this committee. Todd Kilburn, our CFO select, will be starting on June 16th. So by the next audit committee meeting, you will have known him, and Buddy's helping with the onboarding as well. So we're excited to have him come on board. Another issue is that as you know, the Fire Commission is attached to KCTCS. There were some change in leadership, and we have an interim executive director there. The Fire Commission voted to start a state audit concerning the Fire Commission. And so, again, I assume that this committee needs to be made aware of that. And so that process has started concerning HR and financial issues at the Fire Commission as well. It was a unanimous vote, and they're looking forward towards completing that and any findings that may come out of that. Other than that, we've started the presidential evaluations, and we'll be starting cabinet evaluations this afternoon. But I look forward to our June meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. This is the point in the meeting where I do like to call on Regents if there are any unanswered questions or any comments that you have. I like to be able to go to the meeting in June and say that we all had all of our questions answered and any issues that we may have had lingering completed. I think an audit committee needs to be able to say that. So, James Lee, I'm going to start with you. Any unanswered questions, any comments?
Just a couple of comments. First of all, about safety. That's just a frightening thing. And I know that Dr. Qualls takes it serious, but you know, sometimes you can't wait for people to decide. You've got to make them, you got to lead the horse to the trough, is what I'm saying is. So, you know, with some of those issues, I know money's strength and they have other budget things, but there's nothing more important than safety. The second one I'd ask Buddy is, I got the budget proposal for next year, and I see that I would assume that all of this, approximately ever how much it was, $72 million. I saw a great thing in there is that basically the fees were returned, I'm assuming, to the colleges, and like colleges, one college was charged $2 million, and next year it's $500,000. So the colleges should have some money in that regard. Of course, remember, I hope they remember this is one-time money that returned to them, and that's not reoccurring. So I really want to thank Buddy for that. And Buddy, I'd like to maybe you toot your own horn, or Dr. Qualls one, and report that to the board that has been disseminated, and that is something that was a hot item. We've taken care of it. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you, James Lee. I absolutely appreciate those comments. And Regent McGraw, any thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, one observation and then one quick question. Observation is, I appreciate the zeal and deliberate nature in addressing each of these things. And when you said you were knee deep in things, I think it seems like more neck deep. So I appreciate that and wading through it. My one question though, and forgive this if everybody else knows this and I can take it offline. Can you explain the relationship with the Fire Commission?
Yes. I'll avoid the historic aspects of it, but they are attached to us through administrative purposes. So they have their own board that oversees firefighter training across Kentucky. They own a lot of property. Their headquarters currently is in Paris. And historically, they've been attached to us for well over a decade. The legal duties that we have is that I select and have oversight of the executive director. Then the executive director manages the rest of the office, including the selection of the deputy executive director. Long story short, we do anticipate some HR and financial findings. We welcome those. The Fire Commission has a can-do, proactive attitude towards implementing whatever changes strengthen the relationship with KCTCS. And this may include legislative tweaks. We clearly know that policies need to be developed, including clearing up the muddied water between what is KCTCS responsible for, particularly for budget oversight, as an example, versus what's the responsibility of the Fire Commission. And right now, after 5 months on the job, there's a lot of inherent confusion over what exactly each entity is responsible for. We need to clear that up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Appreciate it. Regent Hamilton.
My question just got answered because I was unfamiliar with the fire commission completely, and I'm sure it just went over my head. So I'm going to do some individual research to kind of get more familiar for me personally. But that was the main one I had. Appreciate the ask.
And they gave me a nice firefighter hat this week too.
Wow.
Nice,
The
nice.
captain.
You know, if you turned that over and walked through the office, you could probably collect some money for Crusade.
Let's do it.
So, Chair Martin, how about you?
No, I'm good. I appreciate the thorough report and welcome aboard, Jody.
Absolutely. Thank you. And in closing, let me first thank all the staff of KCTC. Chelsea, Chris, I think Shannon is off now, but I'd like to thank you guys for the service that you provide us. Make sure if Shannon's not on, she knows how much I appreciate the wonderful outline that even an idiot like me can follow. And it really does make a difference knowing that everybody's pulling the same direction. I enjoy the thoroughness with which we get these meetings. Jody, I appreciate the specificity in the reports. I'll end where I started. I think the credibility of the organization, while it lies in leadership and how we execute, but the credibility of the underpinning is right here in this audit committee, making sure that we're doing the right work the right way and involving the right people. So thanks for your time. And I'll turn it back to you, President Quarles, if there's anything else before we say goodbye.
Thank you for your service. Enjoy your weekend. And I look forward to seeing most of you in Bowling Green in 2 weeks. Thank you.
See you there.
Thank
Let's
you
not
all.
forget a motion.
Thank you.
Oh,
do it.
sorry. Yeah, I spoke too soon.
I'll make a
That's
motion to
okay.
adjourn.
How about a
Thank you.
second?
Second.
We're good.
All right, by consensus. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Good
Thank
seeing
you. Have a great
everybody.
weekend.
Bye.